Colts fan. Let's go!
The Baltimore Colts began training for their 1968 season last July, while their most illustrious fan began a different quest. Governor Agnew's quest ended in a dream, in the spotlight of the White House. Baltimore's ended in a nightmare, under the lights of the Orange Bowl on a night in January, ended by a team from New York and a guy named Joe. But that night has made too many forget that between July and January, the Colts recorded an historic season of football, one that after 9 frustrating years brought an NFL championship back to Baltimore. The Colts entered the '68 season with confidence, but with the knowledge that it would be difficult to match last year's great record. Gone were the prolific hands of Raymond Berry. Gone were the familiar white spats of Lenny Moore. And finally, gone would be the golden arm of Johnny Unitas. Unitas' arm had been injured in the Colts' final preseason game, a debilitating injury which doctors said would take time to heal. However, 2 weeks before, Coach Don Shula had the foresight to acquire Earl Morrall as a backup for Unitas. Morrall had drifted from the 49ers to the Steelers to the Lions, then finally to New York, where some thought he might be another Y.A. Tittle. But after 2 years at the Giants' helm, a scrambler was brought in, and Morrall was traded to the Colts for a second-string tight end. Although he had solid technical credentials, Morrall had never been a champion in his 12-year pro career. Thus, Baltimore entered their first game against the 49ers with Johnny Unitas facing the opponent's sideline, not its goal line, while Earl Morrall faced the stiffest test of his career, a test which he nearly failed when on the third play of the game, his pass was intercepted and run in for a touchdown. But Earl Morrall then passed his test against his former teammates. It was revenge for Morrall and victory for the Colts. Revenge and victory, Baltimore's theme for 1968. Earl Morrall is today the Horatio Alger of pro football. From vagabond to NFL Player of the Year, 1968 was Morrall's year, a year in which a 33-year-old bench warmer became a 34-year-old hero and a star. If Morrall was a hero, so were the others on a smooth and efficient offense. Linemen Bill Curry, Glenn Ressler, Dan Sullivan, Bob Vogel, and Sam Ball best protected Morrall against the best defenses, and were an equally successful escort for his runners. One of Coach Shula's many achievements was the establishment of a strong ground attack. 7-year man Jerry Hill, number 45, known primarily for his blocking, parlayed a determined heart and legs of granite into another good year as both runner and receiver. When Hill was injured midway through the season, Indiana rookie Terry Cole, number 34, replaced him without costing the Colts a yard. Finally, there was Tom Matty, the tough, hard-bitten driving back who does everything a runner is supposed to and gives 200% in doing it. The 8-year veteran from Ohio State had his best season as he led the team in touchdowns and yards gained. He always seemed to save his best efforts for the crucial games. To Matty, of course, there were 17 crucial games, an attitude that permeated the entire squad and one which has truly made Tom Matty a winner. Willie Richardson led a core of receivers that also helped Morrall achieve stardom. Willie has all the assets. Locked in Raymond Berry's shadow for 4 years, Richardson proved that his 1967 All-Pro performance was no fluke. The other wide receiver was 32-year-old Jimmy Orr, small in size, but long on desire. In his 11th year, Orr got by mainly on subtlety and experience, but he still found the end zone a reachable target for his aging legs. Rookie Tom Mitchell, used sparingly off a double tight end formation, caught 9 passes, of which 5 went for touchdowns. In John Mackey, Baltimore has a football player about whom words have become superfluous. The Colts' leading receiver, Mackey, rampaged and battered his way through another outstanding season, culminating in his 3rd straight All-Pro selection. It all added up to a disciplined, explosive offense that helped keep the Colts undefeated after their opening day win over the 49ers. In their second game, it took a flea flicker from Morrill to Orr, one of 3 scoring passes, to help beat the stubborn Atlanta Falcons 28-20. In Pittsburgh, the Colts defense tied an NFL record when Roy Hilton, Charlie Stoops, and Bobby Boyd ran back 3 interceptions for touchdowns in a 41-7 rout. Baltimore's 4th straight win came over the Bears, even though Gale Sayers put the Colts behind early with this 60-yard scoring gallop. But that was all Sayers and the Bears would get. The Colts gained 150 yards rushing against a rugged defense, and Morrill threw for 4 touchdowns in a 28-7 victory. The opening kickoff was the backbreaker in the Colts' 2nd victory over the 49ers, 42-14. Preston Pearson, who never played college football, cantered 97 yards to a touchdown. Baltimore returned home undefeated to play the Cleveland Browns, and 2 weeks ahead lay a showdown with its arch rival, the Los Angeles Rams. If the Colt offense was efficient, its defense was invincible, flawless, and superb. Playing with a confident abandon and a remarkable coordination, the defense became the main reason for bringing an NFL championship back to Baltimore. It was a defense of swarming blue jerseys that forced so many breaks, the offense rarely had to take the ball more than half the field, and one which set up or itself scored innumerable touchdowns. Baltimore's defense blended the wisdom of age with the boldness of youth. Ordell Bracy at right end finished his 12th season harassing quarterbacks. Next to Bracy was number 76, Fred Miller, after 6 years just reaching his prime and again a Pro Bowl participant. At left tackle was number 74, Billy Ray Smith. For those who thought Billy Ray's good years were behind him, his 12th season was perhaps his best. And finally at left end stood the imposing specter of Bubba Smith. Bubba was moved from tackle to end this year, and like a baby with a new toy, it became his personal playground, as number 78 leaped and romped to a great season in his first as a starter. With the strength of a tiger and the arms of an octopus, Bubba became a holy terror to the enemy and fully justified his #1 draft selection 2 years ago. The linebackers were always the key to Don Shula's complex defenses. Number 53, Dennis Gorbatz, played the middle. Veteran Don Shinnick, number 66, and sophomore Ron Porter, number 55, both guarded the right side. Then there was number 32, Mike Curtis. Drafted #1 4 years ago as a fullback, Shula wisely saw his potential as a linebacker, and Mike became the Colts' biggest success story of the season defensively. Curtis played with a determined aggressiveness reminiscent of the all-time great linebackers of the past. If he is able to sustain his all-pro performance, he will one day surely join them. An accomplished foursome patrolled the Colts secondary. Lenny Lyles and Bobby Boyd at the corners provided 20 years experience and may know more about pass defense than some coaches. Boyd, number 40, moved into 3rd place on the all-time interception list, but his forte was tackling, the kind that earned him all-pro honors for the 4th time. Like a rare wine, he seems to get better with age. The Colts safeties, Jerry Logan and Rick Volk, exemplified the togetherness that made its pass defense the stingiest in the league. Logan, number 20, has been a regular in the defensive backfield for 5 years. Volk, number 21, finished only his 2nd season, but fulfilled his vow to make All-Pro with a brash, gambling style of play that earned him everyone's respect. So this was the Colt defense, a defense of menacing faces that became known as one of the most shattering units in the last decade, and after a loss to Cleveland, led Baltimore through 10 straight victories. The Browns had dealt Baltimore a defeat. Now a victory over the Rams would not only be revenge, but a necessity. The Colts won 24-10 and won so convincingly that the Rams gained little over 100 total yards, and Gabriel was unmercifully dumped 5 times by a defense that played with a controlled fury at times frightening to watch. In retrospect, this became Baltimore's biggest game of the year, since a rematch would turn out to be meaningless. More importantly, it gave them an emotional lift that helped them stampede through the rest of the season. In New York, the Giants became the Colts' first shutout victim since 1964, as they stifled Fran Tarkenton's razzle-dazzle and won 26-0. In Detroit, the Colts won 27-10 as the defense got to Bill Munson 4 times, and Earl Morrow threw for 250 yards to complete a sweep of all of the teams he formerly played with. A 27-0 win over St. Louis gave the Colts their 2nd shutout in 3 weeks, with 5 interceptions being the key to victory. Against the tough Minnesota Vikings, Morrow threw for 3 first-half scores, but the defense was again the difference, as they reached the quarterback 5 times and hung on in the 2nd half to preserve a 21-9 victory. Number 82, Raymond Berry, was honored as the Colts clobbered the Falcons, tying a record with their 3rd shutout of the year. If they could next beat the Packers and the Bears could upset the Rams, Baltimore would be division champion. It was December 7th in Green Bay, and on a most impressive but frost-bitten Veterans Day at Lambeau Field, Coach Don Shula would have to find enough heroes to beat the Packers in their own icebox. Willie Richardson was cold, but Willie was a hero as he beat Herb Adderley for the only touchdown of the game. But the game was really won down in the dirt by the defense. The Colt defense forced 5 turnovers, setting up every score but one. And more than that, physically beat the once proud Packers so badly that the 16-3 score concealed the true margin of the Packers' defeat. In the last 7 games, the Colts had allowed but 2 touchdowns, an incredible record that was finally rewarded when on the following day the Bears upset the Rams and Baltimore was Coastal Division champion. The place, Baltimore's Memorial Stadium, the date, December 22nd, the Western Conference Championship against the Minnesota Vikings. For the Colts, Christmas would come 3 days early.
Introducing the offensive unit of the Baltimore Colts. At center, number 50 from Georgia Tech, Bill Curry. At left guard, number 71 from Boston College.
A month ago, Baltimore had defeated the Vikings with an aggressive rush and a goal line stand that stopped Bill Brown twice from the one to ensure a 21-9 victory.
73 from Kentucky, Sam Bell. At quarterback, number 15 from Michigan State, Earl Morris. Coach Don Shula and the rest.
Today, on a wet and cold Sunday afternoon, the defense would probably again be the key to the game's outcome. And in a scoreless first quarter, it was the Viking defense that stood out. But the Colts would be the first to score.
Complete to Richardson.
A great catch by Richardson and a Morrow to Mitchell touchdown had made it 7-0 at halftime. The game was won in the third quarter.
Come on, baby, let's go.
First, John Mackey ran away from 2 defenders for a 50-yard touchdown. But the defense would apply the clincher on the very next series of downs, as a vocal and emotional Tom Matte gave them their inspiration.
Come on, Chitty, get him going. What do you say? Big play, baby. Come on.
Trailing 21-0 now, the Vikings were down but not out.
Come on, Bo, get after it, baby! Come on, Reverend!
Their last chance was to keep a drive going with 4th and 6 on the Colt 20.
Come on, defense!
It failed. Joe Kapp and the Vikings had been left in the mud of Memorial Stadium. The Vikings did score 2 touchdowns, but they came hopelessly late, and all that was left was to run out the clock.
Run it out!
Baltimore had done it. They were the Western Conference champions for the first time in 4 years and would now face the Browns in Cleveland for the NFL title. To the Colts, the NFL championship was mostly a matter of revenge. Not only had the Browns shut out Baltimore in the '64 championship, but earlier this year dealt them their only loss, 30-20. They did it on the running of the great Leroy Kelly and the unfortunate bounce of the ball, as 3 costly deflected interceptions resulted in the Colts' first defeat. Today would be different. Today, December 29th, 80,000 watched in a chilled silence as Don Shula coached, Earl Morrow called, and the defense played what was later termed the perfect game. Kelly and the Browns' running attack were methodically reduced to sawdust by a Colt defense that held him to 28 yards. Their passing attack was effectively shackled by a front line that buried Nelson and Ryan 4 times and pressured them into 2 costly interceptions, which, along with a fumble and a blocked field goal, were the keys to Baltimore's easy victory. On offense, Morrow threw sparingly but effectively, and Colt runners racked up 190 yards. Tom Matte had his greatest game of the year, tying a championship record with 3 touchdowns. When it was all over, people had seen a display of flawless football, a tribute to a hungry and frustrated team that never forgot 1964, and to its coach. Coach of the Year, Don Shula. What were Shula's thoughts on a most satisfying season? He must have thought about Miami and the game that spoiled an otherwise super year. He must have also thought, however, that despite being upset by the Jets, 15-2 was still the best record in both leagues. 60 minutes in Miami could not erase that fact.